All right, ladies and gents. So I'm feeling much better. Thanks everybody for the get well wishes. Fever last few days. Now I feel pretty much 100%. So this movie was not on. I mean, this is typical me. It was not on the list of movies, like the dozen movies that I got to record videos for this week that I've been watching for the last week or so. But I was surfing YouTube the other night and somehow like the ending of Reservoir Dogs came up in suggestions. So I said, "Oh shit, that's a movie I completely forgot about for the video I did recently for my top movie endings because that would definitely be close, if not make the list if I redid that because I completely forgot about this movie. The ending to this film is phenomenal, but we'll get there. This is Tarantino's 1992 debut, Reservoir Dogs. Because we're like halfway through Tarantino now, because I've done videos on Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Inglourious Bastards, and both Kill Bills. So I figure why not go back to the beginning with Reservoir Dogs. Now, despite my favorite Tarantino movie, and what I think is his masterpiece, being Inglourious Bastards, there's a lot of things in this movie that I think are still his best, like, to date in his career. One is the cast. I think this is the best cast in a Tarantino film. And yeah, that's saying a lot because all of the casts in all of the movies that he's done are fucking excellent for the most part. But you have Tim Roth here. You have Lawrence Tierney as Joe. You have Chris Penn, who was such a great actor. And it sucks that we lost him so young. Because he, I think, was better than his brother. We have Harvey Keitel, Michael Madsen, Steve Buscemi. It's just all-star cast here, even though, you know, some of that was earlier on for some of them. They weren't as big of actors as you know them today. But what an amazing cast for your debut film. Another thing about this movie that I think is his best to date is just using his imagination. Because it's all set in this warehouse after the diamond robbery. We never see the actual robbery, which I think was a great decision to not show us anything of what goes on in there. Instead, we hear about what happened and even differences in how they perceive what happened through the characters themselves, through these quote-unquote professionals that I love Mr. Pink constantly keeps throwing into this movie. He's the only one in this movie that keeps trying to just be the most professional criminal and crook that there is and to just stop all this craziness between everybody. Now, this is a whole theory we'll go into at the end, but I want your theories on what you think happened to Mr. Pink. Because pretty sure it's been quite a bit since I've seen this. I'm pretty sure you can hear Mr. Pink getting shot by the police, like in the last few seconds, but I don't know if I'm just remembering that from somewhere I heard it, or I'll find out by the end here. But let me know what you think happened to Mr. Pink after this. Did he get away? I mean, I don't see how, because the cops had the place surrounded waiting for Joe. And the third thing that I think Tarantino never quite reached this level again in his own work is the dialogue in this movie, which Tarantino obviously became famous for his dialogue in his movies. I still think this movie has the best dialogue. Like, everything is very streamlined. It's not as bloated feeling as pretty much every other movie in his whole filmography. As it continues going, even, it gets a little more I don't mean bloated in a bad way. More going on, you know, more extravagant, eccentric movies. This is very contained to the one location at the warehouse, with very few other locations we see in flashbacks, real briefly throughout this movie. So he had to use his imagination and creativity to the extreme for this movie to make it happen. And I think he just wrote the dialogue perfectly in this movie. And we get a brilliant example of how good the dialogue is as soon as this movie opens. So let's deep dive into Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs from 1992. Also, this movie has, I think, one of the best ending credit songs in a movie. I say that with Excision from 2012. And I don't mean like a film score, like an actual song by an artist or a band used in a film. What is it, Henry Nilsson, the artist, the Put a Lime in the Coconut? What a great way to end this movie. Are you serious? Love that song as the ending to this movie. But the whole opening scene with them eating is just dialogue heaven. Mr. Brown, or Tarantino's opening dialogue about Madonna and Like a Virgin, which completely ruined that song for me ever since I first saw this movie. Anytime I hear Like a Virgin, immediately I think of Tarantino's voice talking about this slut who's fucked everybody, and then she meets Cavalier Dick, and she ends up feeling pain for the first time ever since the first time, hence Like a Virgin. I mean, brilliantly written, but ruined the song for me. Then all the stuff between the great Harvey Keitel and the great Lawrence Tierney. And I like how Tarantino kind of throws in a little bit of foreshadowing here that Mr. White isn't going to back down to Joe so easily. And then, of course, in the final scene, we see that to the extreme. But I think that's a great little foreshadow there. But all the stuff there when he takes Joe's book and says, I'll give it back if you stop, going through and saying names out loud. I got this in one ear, I got Madonna and the big dick in the other ear. And then the capper is Steve Buscemi. Mr. Pink's whole speech on why he doesn't believe in tipping.
Come on, throw in a buck.
I don't tip.
You don't tip?
No, I don't believe in it.
You don't believe in tipping?
She don't make enough money, she can quit.
I don't even know a fucking Jew would have the balls to say that. Now, let me just get this straight. You don't ever tip, huh?
I don't tip because society says I have to. All right, I mean, I'll tip if somebody really deserves a tip. If they really put forth the effort, I'll give them something extra. But, I mean, this tipping automatically, it's for the birds.
You don't tip.
You don't tip? What do you mean you don't tip?
You don't believe in it.
Shut up. What do you mean you don't believe in it?
You can't ask for a better opening scene. Also, we can all agree here that Mr. Blue is such a waste of a character. I mean, he's there just for there to be another, one of these criminals in this heist to die, right? Because I forget he even exists half the time. So much so, in fact, that I have these Reservoir Dog figurines from way back. It don't come with Mr. Blue. So even they forgot about him. As a big stand-up comic fan, I do like Stephen Wright quite a bit. So I love the fact that he voices, he plays K-Billy for K-Billy Super Sounds of the 70s. That's a great addition. And all the music used in this movie is fantastic also, which is another thing I think Tarantino just has a huge knack for, is just picking the right music for his movies. But after the opening credits, we see right from the beginning of his career him using the nonlinear structure to tell his story. And we see Mr. Orange bleeding in the back of the car, Mr. White driving it, and Mr. Orange is freaking out, thinking he's going to die, and they get to the warehouse. Nobody else is there. I'll also make this argument. I think this is one of Harvey Keitel's best performances. I mean, he's done a lot of great stuff, but I think his portrayal of Mr. White here is top tier in his career. The way that he portrays Mr. White as this, he's this hardened criminal, but he thinks about the job first. He's not a crazy maniac, as he says with Mr. Blonde, how he just starts shooting the place up. He says, I'm not a psychopath. I can't work with psychopaths. So he knows what he's doing. He's been a criminal pretty much most of his life, but he still has a heart. And the fact that he wanted to see the best in Mr. Orange, he gave him his name because he was trying to calm him down, and told him where he was from, like days earlier or something like that. It shows that he really wanted to trust this person, to the point that it cost him his life at the end of this movie. And I just think all the emotions that Harvey Keitel shows in the ending of this movie is just spectacular. So Mr. Pink shows up to the warehouse, so it's just the three of them. Orange is bleeding out on the ground. And I like how Tarantino lets us know, like halfway through this movie, that Mr. Orange is an undercover cop and that he's the rat. That was a great decision because it really leads to some suspense, because we know something that none of the characters do, except for Mr. Orange. He knows he's a cop. So they start recounting what happened, and this is where you see them sharing their perspectives of what happened, because they start recounting the story together. And then certain details, Mr. Pink has to jump in and say, no, that's not right. The cops didn't show up until Mr. Blonde started shooting the place up. I love how that whole scene plays out between them because it's true to real life. If you were robbing a diamond place or robbing anything, a bank, whatever, you're trying to pull a heist, and then somebody in your own team starts shooting people like a madman, which again, we never see exactly what happened in this store during the robbery. So, did he actually go crazy, Mr. Blonde? I mean, I'm guessing so, because both of them here saw it. So I guess he did go nuts. He does give an explanation later, saying he doesn't like alarms. He told them not to trip the alarms. They did, and he ended up having to kill them. As a criminal, yeah, you're going to have to do that. But after you blast your way out of a heist gone wrong, and you're shooting cops, which I think is hilariously fucked up, that he says, did you kill anybody? Any real people? He says, no, just cops, no real people. Something like that. That's fucking hilarious. After all that, you're not going to remember exact details. Like, our human memory is not reliable. So I love that he wrote it this way, and it plays out this way, because you see them recounting it in their own versions in their head, and they start, like, bickering over it and correcting each other. Then we see Mr. Pink shooting some cops. When he was getting away, he has the diamonds, he ends up stashing them, and this is where I would be fucking out. I think it's crazy that these guys wait at this warehouse. Like, if he is that convinced that there's a rat, and I know he brings this up a few times, saying we should get a hotel, just and lay low for a few days, I don't know why they didn't do it. They're supposed to be professionals. Like he says, I'm not a professional criminal or crook, but even I wouldn't stay there. If there's a rat, then they absolutely know about this place, and I would be so far gone, especially that he said he has the stones. Yeah, okay, me and you are going to go pick him up. We out. And Mr. White, who we know his actual name is Larry, he has some terrible luck, man, because he tells Mr. Pink here that a few years back he was supposed to do a job, and they found out that one of the people was an undercover cop, and they discovered it before the job, and he, walked away and forgot all about it. But it was close. And then this happens, man. I mean, that's just terrible luck for him. So then we get the flashback about Mr. White, and we see him meeting up with Joe and him learning about the details of this job. And then Mr. Blonde shows up, and all the tension between him and Mr. White is fantastic here. And it just, his whole demeanor, Michael Madsen playing this character of Vic Vega, which somebody let me know if it's an actual theory or if it's been confirmed or something, that Vic Vega in this movie is brothers with Vincent Vega from Pulp Fiction. Pretty sure I've heard that before. So I'm not sure if it's been confirmed by Tarantino, but if you know, let me know. Are you going to bark all day, little doggy? Or are you going to bite? So many great lines in this. Then we get the whole flashback with Mr. Blonde meeting up with Joe and his son, Nice Guy Eddie, Chris Penn. I just love the whole character of Nice Guy Eddie. And this is where we find out that these guys have a long-standing history together. And we find out that he did time for them. And this is something that Mr. Orange didn't foresee. I'm guessing he just thought everybody on the team were just hired criminals. He didn't know that there was such a friendship and past between Vic Vega and, Joe and his son, which is a great setup for Chris Penn's monologue at the end of this movie. Then we get just one of the most infamous scenes from this movie, probably the most, with Mr. Blonde torturing the cop. He ended up taking a cop hostage and has him in his trunk, and he ends up getting him out, brings him into the warehouse, and then the rest of them go to find the diamonds. And they leave this cop alone with Mr. Blonde, who's a fucking psychopath, stuck in the middle with you playing, and he's dancing, and he's torturing, slicing this guy, and then he cuts his ear off. He's hello. Then he starts putting the gasoline on him, and you done? You're done? Like, this guy has zero fucks given to anything in life. He's gonna do whatever he wants. And then Mr. Orange comes out of, I guess he was pretending to be passed out, I guess, because he heard what was going on. And then he just blasts Mr. Blonde away. And I think it's a nice little detail that Tarantino threw in here because it easily could have just been the cop had no idea that there was an undercover, didn't know anything about this whole operation. He was just responding to the alarm, like the second wave of cops. I think it's cool that he knew. He knew that Mr. Orange was a cop, and he was ready to die before ratting out, another brother in blue. Just a cool little detail that he didn't have to throw in the script. Which, of course, leads to us finding out that he is the undercover cop, of course, for killing this guy. And then we get his flashback. But I like how we see Mr. Orange, or Freddy, whatever, rehearsing the story. And, practicing it in front of a mirror, and then we actually see him telling it, and then we see it, and he walks in, he's carrying weed on him, and they're all looking at him, these 4, 5 sheriff deputies with a dog, and he has this tense moment, and then they just look away. And then we work our way back to the beginning of the movie, where we see how Mr. Orange was shot. And he had to kill a civilian. And I think the way that Roth portrays that look of like, I didn't want to do that, but what choice do I have? If not, I'm dead too. The way he puts that look on his face and plays that emotion, it's great here.
Hold it! Hold it! Right there! Get in the fucking car!
So he shot her, killed her, and that's where they got the car, and that's where we lead to the end of this movie. Which, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm pissed I forgot about this for my top movie ending list. The suspense and tension in this scene is off the fucking charts. Just because we know Mr. Orange is the rat, and we also know information that he doesn't. That Mr. Blonde, Vic Vega, is longtime friends with Joe and Eddie. And that his whole story here, that he was going to make off with the diamonds, he's going to kill the two of them, the cop and Mr. Orange, take the diamonds when they got there after killing them, and scram. And it makes no sense to Eddie, because this guy just did 4 years for them. His whole monologue here is probably my favorite part of this movie.
All right, let me just say this out loud, because I want to get this straight in my head. You're saying that Mr. Blonde was going to kill you, and then when we got back, he was going to kill us, take the satchel of diamonds, and scram. I'm right about that, right? That's correct. That's your story? The man you just killed just got released from prison. He got caught at a company warehouse full of hot items. He could have fucking walked. All he had to do was say my dad's name, but he didn't. He kept his fucking mouth shut. And he did his fucking time, and he did it like a man. He did 4 years for us. So, Mr. Orange, you're telling me that this very good friend of mine, who did 4 years for my father, who in 4 years never made a deal no matter what they dangled in front of him, you're telling me that now that this man is free, and we're making good on our commitment to him, he's just gonna decide, out of the fucking blue, to rip us off? Why don't you tell me what really happened?
And then we get the Mexican standoff, which great ending to this. I think the order of it is, right, Joe shoots Mr. Orange, then Mr. White shoots Joe, Eddie shoots Mr. White, and Mr. White shoots Eddie? Because there's 4 shots that go off. So I'm pretty sure that's the order.
God damn you, Joe. Don't make me do this.
Larry, stop pointing that fucking gun at my dad!
But yeah, Harvey Keitel's acting in the final scene here is just brilliant. The way he shows all these emotions when Freddy says to him, Larry, I'm a cop. And he realizes he just killed Joe and Eddie that he's known a long-ass time, defending this guy. And he turns out being an undercover cop. He shows so much anguish and regret, but still like heartbroken almost. And then the cops show up. He ends up putting a gun to Mr. Orange's head, blows his head off, and the cops blow Mr. White away. Coconut. Reservoir Dogs, 1992. Alright guys, I'll be recording stuff forever. Oh, I'll talk to you soon. Hope everyone's having a great morning, afternoon, or night. Take care, everybody.
Brother bought a coconut, he bought it for the time. His sister had another one, she paid it for the lime. She put the lime in the coconut, she drank and poured up. She put the lime in the coconut, she drank and poured up. She put the lime in the coconut, she drank and poured up. She put the lime in the coconut, she called the doctor, woke him up and said, Doctor, ain't there nothing I can take? I said, Doctor, to relieve his bellyache. I said, Doctor, ain't there nothing I can take? I said, Doctor, to relieve his bellyache.
Now let me get this straight. Put the lime in the coconut, you drank and poured up. Put the lime in the coconut, you drank and poured up. Put the lime in the coconut, you drank and poured up. Put the lime in the coconut, you called your doctor, woke him up, said, Doctor,
ain't there nothing I can take? I said, Doctor, to relieve his bellyache. I said, Doctor, ain't there nothing I can take? I said, Doctor, to relieve his bellyache. You put the lime in the coconut, you drink them both together. Put the lime in the coconut and you feel better. Put the lime in the coconut, drink them both up. Put the lime in the coconut and call me in the morning.